Hello, my name is Jacob Creech. I'm head of developer relations here at Solana Foundation. Today I'm joined by Noah, who is a software engineer at Solana Labs, and we're going to talk about state compression. So Noah, what is state compression?
State compression is a technology used for linking data off-chain and using it on-chain. There's a bunch of different parts involved, but the most important part is a variation of a Merkle tree called a concurrent Merkle tree. And that's kind of what's unique about state compression on Solana.
Okay, so let's start there then. How does a Merkle tree work? And then we can get into how does a concurrent Merkle tree work?
One of the problems that we have with just bringing data on chain is that we have to pay for each byte of data that we allocate. And so if we can put as little data on chain as possible, but while still being able to reference a bunch of other data, that would be awesome. And so basically we want to kind of put like a small pointer on chain, so it costs us very little, and then point to a lot more data off chain.
Okay.
I guess the reason why I wanted to say that is just so that way we can kind of back up and kind of look at the problem of that inspired state compression, and then walk through kind of what a Merkle tree would do to solve this, and then how the concurrent Merkle tree updates this and kind of solves it specifically for Solana.
Got it. Yeah, state in general on Solana, you don't want to put what is unless it's absolutely needed on Solana. So this is solving a lot of the state issues that we have on Solana, or helping out at the very least.
Yeah, exactly. And the inspiration for this is all the NFT metadata that got thrown onto Solana in 2021 and 2022, and how fast that all happened. There's a bunch of metadata on associated with these NFTs that was important for for users, but not important for its use on chain. And so the idea was, what if we could, basically prove that, this metadata is really an ape or a gorilla, but without actually having to allocate, 60 bytes or 100 bytes or whatever, was needed. What if we could shrink that down and basically make it almost free to put that data on chain? And so that's the problem that inspired this. How much data can we kind of link that off chain and bring it back on chain? Normally, other chains have solved this by using a Merkle tree. And one of the best examples here is actually how airdrops work on Ethereum. So on Ethereum, airdrops worked in a way where users would pay the gas to claim tokens that they were airdropped. And this is important because, transactions are $50+ and, protocols were not willing to, cough that up just to give people free tokens. And the way they solved that problem of, allocating thousands of users tokens was that they put a single Merkle tree hash, which is between 32 and 64 bytes. And that single hash allowed them to link thousands of people's token claims into that single 32 to 64 byte hash. And so that's a Merkle tree. And we can start with kind of how that would solve our problem on Solana. But I'll stop there in case you have questions.
Yeah, I think the tool that they use for that is called the Merkle distributor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen how that works. But yeah, we can go ahead and start whiteboarding how does the Merkle tree maybe even work with that? Do you know how to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can kind of walk through that. Before kind of starting to write this on the whiteboard, have I sufficiently motivated this problem?
Yeah, I think so. State on Solana, very expensive. A lot of state doesn't really necessarily need to be on Solana, especially NFT metadata does not change very often. So put it somewhere else, but make it to where you can get the data on chain.
Yeah, exactly. And so kind of before we dive into how we solve this, I think we'll explore how people have solved a similar problem, which is, distributing thousands of people's tokens via airdrops with this Merkle distributor.
All right, cool. Let's do it.
Cool. Okay, so we're just going to talk a little bit about Merkle trees and how they solve the airdrop problem. the idea is you have a gigantic array of people's claims. So you have like a user. I know I'm going to get flayed alive for saying user instead of address. So
It's okay.
we'll just say we have like, we have a list of addresses and like their token amounts.
Okay.
So in this case, I'm trying to write A1, T1, A2, T2, etc. And putting all this on chain is, it's a linear cost, right? So in this case, it's O of n. This is the cost to put on chain.
Right. The more, and with an O(n), the more addresses you have, the more expensive it gets. Especially on Solana, each address is 32 bytes. It gets very expensive when you get like a 10,000 NFT drop. It's very expensive on Solana that way.
Yep, exactly. And this is like you said, this is already what's happening with like, normal NFTs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you're thinking about airdropping, exactly what you said, it's linear in the number of recipients. So we want a way to kind of bring this cost down from O of n to O of log n, or even if better, the best would be like constant,
Right.
right? O of 1. And Merkle trees allow us to get to O of 1 cost with Merkle trees. And so the idea is that we can basically take this big array and kind of hash all the elements together. So I'm going to just copy this array down here, but I'm going to
Okay.
use L1 and kind of like the idea is that each of these I'm just going to call L1, L2, etc.
Okay. And what does L stand for?
We're going to call these individual items in here leaves.
Okay.
So L sub I. And the idea is we're going to create a tree out of this with a big root on top. And this Merkle tree root is what we put on chain. The idea is you can create a Merkle tree by hashing together a bunch of corresponding elements or adjacent elements in a list. And over time, you end up
At the tree root?
at the tree root.
Okay.
And so this practice of combining L1 and L2 and creating like a parent node, this is basically a hash operation. So in this case, I'm just going to do left right is equal to like a parent node.
Okay.
And so, for example, this is just a parent node.
Okay. And what in this? You said it was a O of 1 cost. Is that because the only thing would be the tree root, or how does that work?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So now, basically, with Merkle trees, instead of having to put this on chain, we actually can only put this.
Okay.
Now, you should at least have one question.
How do you
about this.
derive these from that? Or
Yes, exactly.
okay. Yeah, I have no idea right now. So that's a good question.
Okay, first off, do you want me to redraw anything?
It looks fine right now. If it's sufficient enough to answer that question, I think we're good.
Okay, cool. So the idea is that I think I'm gonna try to rephrase your question,
Okay.
which is how do we prove that, for example, L2, which is, address 2 has T2 tokens, right?
Right.
We're putting this single thing on chain. Now what we've done is we've traded off lookup, right, for size,
Right.
right? So when we had this linear array on chain, it was very easy to find out, who has how much tokens.
Right. It's just it's a simple lookup versus this. You're gonna have to do some hashing to figure it out.
Yeah, even right now, it's not exactly clear.
Right.
Right. So what we're gonna
find out in a moment.
right. So I'm just going to erase this and just kind of focus the top part here, and just say that right now what we're focused on is lookup with a Merkle tree.
Okay.
So how do we know A2 has T2 tokens?
Is this specifically given just the tree root?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Just given tree root. And so this is basically how we end up getting to the primary function of Merkle trees, which is their Merkle proofs.
Okay.
And so Merkle proofs are basically a way for me to basically, in addition with just the basic information about a user's claim, I can basically take a Merkle proof is basically a way for me to take the user's claim with some additional data and prove that it belongs to this Merkle tree
Okay.
by hashing it up to the root.
Okay. So this is like if a user,
Sorry.
That's fine. If a user, say this is L1, gets to address 1 and amount of tokens 1. Say it's my address. I claim that I have 1,000 tokens or something. I'm saying the claim, and you're trying to prove that it actually belongs to this tree root overall. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so the idea is it's just the proof is just whatever is needed to hash the root. And so this here is going to be R.
Okay.
And so we want to get the additional data to go from L2 hash up to the root.
Okay. How does that work?
So in this tree, I'm going to start off just by like circling the nodes which belong to the proof, and then I'll explain how this works. The idea is we're trying to get the information necessary to go from L2 all the way up the tree to the root.
Okay.
So this first step is we get the adjacent leaf, which allows us to hash up to the parent. And then to go to the next node up, we also have to get the next adjacent node.
Okay. So you need all of the child nodes to get the parent node.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
So you end up just getting like you'll get these two, and these two, and then you can get the root.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the key thing here is that we're going to take specifically the adjacent nodes. So we'll take the adjacent nodes. So I'm going to try to use a different word here. I'm going to try to use like the path, or I guess I'll try to use blue to denote like the path here,
Okay.
and then the red for the proof.
Okay.
So in this case, the path up to the root is like this here. Oh, this is maybe not the best color choice, but
He's brown.
it's all right.
Okay.
Marty.
Committed.
Yep. And so these blue nodes are the path, and the
Okay.
proof specifically, just to be formally complete, are the red adjacent nodes
Okay.
in the groupings you've selected.
Okay. So we have the claim of L1, right?
Yep.
We have that claim. How do we get the rest of them?
Yeah. So you're asking like, how do we do this lookup for any arbitrary leaf?
Like, so if I have L1, I'm saying L1 is supposed to be, I have address 1 and token allocation 1.
Yep.
How am I supposed to, from that, find L2 and then subsequently every, I guess, required node to get back to the root? How do you do that lookup?
Yeah. On chain or off chain?
Let's go off chain first.
Okay, off chain, you have to have a server that basically can serve this data and can like filter it and
So
like.
we have a server that's claiming that this is what it is, basically.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so there's someone storing this data, and they're saying, okay, this is what the tree looks like. You're claiming you're this one. Because you're claiming this one, I have the rest that, if you are correct, I can construct the tree root.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so then on-chain, how do you do this?
Yeah, on chain, what you do is you don't necessarily do a lookup. What you do is a verification.
Okay,
And so on chain, instead of basically asking for how much someone's attempting to claim, you instead assert that A1 is trying to claim T1 tokens for their airdrop, and with the proof data, it indeed matches the root.
okay, so you take all the information that you got off-chain. So
Yep.
That hey, this is my claim. Here's all the things that to construct the roots, and then on-chain, you give all that data to whatever on-chain program is, and then it just does the verification.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a lot of data.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why like this kind of Merkle structure, Merkle tree data structure is kind of difficult to use is that the proof size increases with the height of the tree.
Right. I was gonna say, how big do these trees get?
Yeah, it's let's log. So this is a great question. The proof data is actually. Do you want to guess? In terms of like the size, in terms of the number of
Of leaf
claims.
nodes or whatever. The proof data. Oh, I have no idea. How much is like if you had a basic one? What like if you had just these three, right? These two.
Yep.
For claims, like how much would that be bytes on chain?
It would just be one, or the bytes on chain are always the same, which is just
Okay.
a constant 32 or
But the proof size is even. I guess. Okay. How big is the proof size then for that?
the proof size would only be one, right? Because you only need the adjacent node,
What does that equal though in bytes?
32 bytes.
32 bytes. Okay.
Yeah. So it's the size of the node in bytes.
Okay.
So if you have like 4 claims in a tree, you only have 2 levels. And so you would only go like 1, 2 root.
Right. Okay.
So it's O of log n.
Right. Okay, so 2, why don't you have to provide all of this? Or is that you have to, you do have, that's what you mean by 2?
Well, so you only have to provide the red because on chain, what we're going to do is we're just going to verify the hashing of the nodes.
Okay.
So I can write that like out if you want.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So we're just basically, we're hashing L2, which we have, plus the proof data. Then we get this function result. Then we hash that with the next bit of proof data. And then we get the next function result.
Okay.
Then we hash that with the next bit of proof data. And we get the root.
What does this hashing algorithm look like?
Yeah, it's like whatever. It's the same one that's used for like the anchor discriminator.
Okay.
So it's Keccak. It's like,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's, I don't really want to dive too much into it, but it's like just your normal hashing function.
Got it. All right, so how does this look in practice with like what we use today? Like what is, I guess, where is this actually, how does this work on Solana today? Because I know there is some form of state compression today.
Yeah.
This is like the general overview of how it works. What is it in practice? How does it actually look like?
Perfect. Yeah, let me just kind of erase some of this just to clear out some space. And then let's dive into what's wrong with this and what we had to change to get this to work on Solana.
All right, because this is just a Merkle tree, not a concurrent Merkle tree.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
So the basic idea here is that these leaves here are all metadata, right? So instead of having, a user and tokens, A1, T1, we're going to have metadata.
Right, which is some blob of data, has some information about the token.
Yeah, exactly, right? So this is for example, the owner, and then this is, I don't know, the seller fee basis points.
Okay.
We can choose a different thing or...
You can just make it logo.
Okay. Let's just... I feel like, because logo is not a part of the compression of T thing, so that's why I
Okay.
was like bulking a little. But we
What
can
is-
just do
What is part of the kind of press down two thing today?
seller fee basis points.
That works then.
I'm sorry, I know it's kind of...
works
It's kind
out.
of boring, but... okay, so
That's
these...
specifically for like royalties, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like you can do, okay, you know what, maybe a different, more relevant thing that might actually change would be like update authority.
Okay.
And so basically what we want to do is we want to be able to kind of update this metadata as trades.
Okay.
This airdrop tree does not work for dynamic updates.
Is this because you have to update all these like adjacent nodes all the way down, or how's that? Why? I guess?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So basically, I'm going to make this assertion that the Merkle tree is not dynamic.
Oh, it's a very static thing, right?
Yep.
now. Okay. And the reason why you want to update authority a lot is because if you change the owner, well, I guess you have to change the owner part of it, right?
Yeah, I guess this might be a bad. It's probably better and more simple just to denote this as like, this is the like address of a compressed NFT, and like this is the owner.
Right.
The owner is a part of the metadata.
Right.
For
And
that
the
address.
owner of whatever the compressed NFT can change all the time for trading.
Exactly. You want to be able to trade it, transfer it, whatever.
Right. And the reason why, so this is not dynamic, and if we're constantly trading, that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Got
And
it.
that makes the Merkle tree moot, dead on arrival.
Right. So this works for like airdrops, but it does not work with if you want to change hands of those specific tokens.
Yep. Exactly.
Got it.
And kind of, the reason that I think you were kind of alluding to as to like, why is this? Is that this list of recipients in a normal Merkle tree has no way of kind of keeping track of what's happening on chain.
Right.
So part of the problem is linking, how do you link an update, like a transfer on chain with an update in this claim array
Right.
or in this off-chain claim data?
Is there because it's not dynamic, you can't actually update it today, right? This Merkle tree.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
So one of the issues, and that's I think worth noting here, is that if I were to change L1 to like L1 prime,
Mm-hmm.
or sorry, in this case I've circled L2. If I'm going to update L2 to like L2 prime, what's happened is that now I have to rehash all of this all over again. And so I
Just
actually
to get the root, right?
yeah, and so now I get an updated root.
Oh, and that's very expensive. And especially if you want to do multiple. So if you have like Drip has like millions of compressed NFTs in a collection, right? If you have everybody trading those millions, you can end up being serial. You can't update that root very quickly, especially with Solana. Like sure, Solana moves very quickly. Sure, Solana has like 2,000 TPS per user today. But like if you have millions of NFTs and you want to trade them, having one per block or one per entry on the block, yeah, it's not going to work very well.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're already seeing further down the line.
Right. You're going to be stuck. It's, as you said, dead on arrival.
Yeah, exactly. And so I guess I want to pause here because before we kind of keep chugging along, there is a note that I want to make.
Okay.
That this is like a well-studied space, and people on other ecosystems have been kind of devoting much of time to solving this problem. And the set of solutions to this type of problem where you want to update a single amount of information on chain that links a bunch of, exponential or linear amount of data is known as like a cryptographic accumulator.
Okay.
And so Merkle trees are just one such instance. And so, when we think about the Merkle trees being dead on arrival, we actually end up having to come back to them because on Solana, it's kind of difficult to use the other well-known accumulators.
Okay. Are these other accumulators mostly like off-chain or something?
No, they work the same way where you keep a list of recipients off-chain,
Okay.
but you don't have to do the hashing.
Okay.
So I do want to note that like when we're saying dead on arrival, it just means that we're going to have to do some work.
Right. There's other options.
There
Like-
are other options.
Like with any software engineering problem, there's multiple options and multiple solutions to one problem for usually.
Yep. And so this is probably going to change in the next 2 years after 1.18 comes out and the syscalls are enabled.
Okay.
So, just wanted to kind of say there's always fresh ground to be broken. But like the space of solutions for accumulators that people normally think about use 2 megabytes of proof data.
Okay.
So it's the solution space is like
Wait, really? 2
Yeah.
megabytes?
roundabout,
Okay, that's a lot.
which is why we were like we don't want to consider them either.
Right. Okay.
So that solution space looks very similar, in fact, but it actually looks better, which is the accumulators that you can use if we weren't doing this on chain actually have O of 1 cost, like basically like size on chain. And then the proof data is also O of 1, no matter how much data you have.
Okay.
Now the issue is that the issue for us is that this constant for most of these is like around 2 megabytes,
Right.
right? Obviously you can shrink this with some, I'm gonna hand wave and not even say the word, like ZK or ZK snark stuff. Like, you can do very recursive, crazy math stuff. But this is kind of, I just want to call out, like, this is like a bit of the moon math that will
Right.
be coming in the next few years.
But like today, you can't even do that on Solana or it'd be very hard. You'd have to like do some weird tricks where you're like putting data in a separate account and then loading it slowly through transactions and then point to it because you only have 12, 32 bytes per transaction.
Yeah,
So like that would take a while.
exactly.
Also dead on arrival for Solana. Okay,
Exactly.
got it.
And so the issue, like you said, this 2 megabytes of data, or this that amount of proof data anywhere in this ballpark, DOA, because the user experience requires 10 transactions to transfer an NFT.
Right. That wouldn't work.
No, that just exactly. So this whole space of accumulators that people spend a lot of time on is, for us, not going to work, and it's primarily due to this 2 megabyte proof data requirement.
Right. Okay.
And so that's why we end up coming back all the way back to Merkle trees. Okay, so they were not, Merkle trees are not dynamic, but what if they were? What if we can make this work, right? Because the 2 megabytes are just of proof data are really not going to hack it. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it.
And so now what we're going to do is we're going to try to motivate the updates to a normal Merkle tree that justifies the design and implementation of a concurrent Merkle tree.
Got it. All right, let's get to it.
Cool. So we're going to just kind of jump a little bit here and just say we're going to make concurrent Merkle trees, which is what we use on Solana for state compression today. We're going to make them out of the normal Merkle tree.
Okay. What are they?
Okay. Concurrent Merkle trees are basically our solution to updating metadata on chain and keeping that in sync with an off-chain data server.
Okay. Sure. Let's get into how it works then.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to redraw this for the sake of cleaning this up. But you highlighted a very basic and important problem with airdrops, which is that, like, if you want to update L1 or L2, we're going to only draw a tree with 4 leaves. Ooh, don't know how to draw a 4 today. Okay, so this is our tree with root R. If we wanted to, transfer, if I wanted to transfer my Tensorian to you,
Okay.
right? Let's say this is my Tensorian. So the owner is me, and I'm going to transfer it to you.
So we have to update it to Jacob, basically.
Yep, exactly. Oh, I shouldn't do that. I'm going to transfer this to you, the Tensorian to you. So now this is L1 prime.
Okay. And in the previous case, you'd have to do a bunch of hashing and update the root every single time.
Yeah,
For any of these leaf nodes.
exactly. So now what ends up happening is, if this was parent 1, this becomes parent 1 prime.
Okay.
And this now also has to be an
Root
updated
prime.
R prime.
Right.
And so what we've just done is, and I'm just going to draw this out, we've gone from R to R prime.
Got it.
And in our server, we've also gone from L1 to L1 prime.
And we've also updated the parent node, right?
And correct.
So it's like updating the whole thing, both on chain, or I guess on chain is just the root, but in the server, it's like we update everything from the leaf up. Well,
Everything from
the parents and the. Well, actually, isn't it also the JSON node? So that's what we talked about last time. What do we do with the JSON nodes again?
that's just for the proof data.
Okay. Oh. Okay, so it's just the leaf parent, this direct line, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
It's I think the trick for concurrent Merkle trees is that we look very closely at what paths in the tree are updated or would have to get updated to basically allow this root to kind of keep pushing along.
But isn't this root still? So if you are, is this concurrent Merkle trees?
Yeah.
So wait. How is this solved to where like we have all these different leaf nodes owned by tons of different people, and say there's 100 trades in a block?
Yeah.
How does that solve that? Because you're going to be right locked on the root node being updated constantly.
Exactly. So what we have actually is, all right. We have actually an array on chain. So this, when we talk about a concurrent Merkle tree, this is what we put on chain. So this is the concurrent Merkle tree.
Is there an array of roots?
Yep.
Okay.
Jacob asks like the key question, which is in a single block of transactions, you might have 100 transfers or 100 trades, and all of them have to be able to land. Otherwise, the user experience sucks.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
And so this is the concurrent part of concurrent Merkle trees, which is how do we allow multiple updates to land in the same block?
Okay. How does it work with this array though?
Yeah. So basically, let's kind of begin with like trade one, right?
Right.
So, sorry, this
One
is,
was Noah to Jacob.
yeah, exactly. So, okay, we'll do this in the middle. T1.
Okay.
T1 is an update that forces us to go from R to R prime,
Got it.
right? Now, if we have a second trade or transfer, this will go to R double prime.
Got it.
Okay. Now, you probably have a question here.
Yes, I still don't understand how this is supposed to work in multiple trades in one block.
Right. Okay, so let's kind of look a little bit closer.
Is this array of roots or what
Yep.
is this array of?
We have an array of roots on chain, and when we talk about a concurrent Merkle tree, we're referring to an array of roots.
Okay.
Now,
How does that still work though? Like how is it still concurrent? Because
yeah,
so if you have T1 and T2, say they happen in the same block, how do you know what order that they happen in?
yeah, we don't,
You don't. Okay.
right? So that's the other thing is we need to be able to land T1 and T2 no matter what order they land in.
Okay. So how do you get the roots correct then?
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that's kind of important to note is that when we talk about a block, these are all landing at the same time.
Right.
And so we know that
We could have 100 T's in a single block.
exactly. So we're gonna have T1, T2, T100. Realistically, it'll be 64, but
Okay. Is that like the max roots that you can have in an array or something?
it's the max updates I think you can have to a single account.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay. So, well, I think I got up to 120, but that's just for sake of completeness. Let's say it's 64 today.
Okay. Yeah, but it's the max. Yeah, exactly.
So max updates in single account.
Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at what is the root at the time of this block. At the time that before any of these trades get processed, the root is actually at R,
Right.
right? Because that's just the resting state of the tree, right? So we can just go at R. All of these trades have to land when the tree starts off at R.
Okay.
Does that sound like a proper setup so far?
Yes, because otherwise, in a single block, well, you can have multiple writes, but for sake of things, we'll just say that one update, one root update per block.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and the idea for justifying this is that each one of these trades will also have to come along with like a proof,
Right.
right? P1, P2, P64.
So,
Right.
so question: could you not have 64 trades on L1 then?
No.
That's because you won't know the proofs to give the whatever the verifier is on chain to update it, right?
Well, so we kind of made like a design decision here to kind of prevent a bunch of successive updates within the same block.
Okay.
And the idea is
I
that
feel like it get really messy if you do allow it.
yeah, exactly. You can go back and forth basically. Basically, your question here, your line of question here is correct, which is, trade one assumes that I still have the tensorian, and I'm going to transfer it to you. Now, maybe a bunch of trades later, you send it back to me.
Right.
Now T64 or something is like, oh, I'm ready to trade it
Ready to
again.
trade
But I meant to send it, maybe I meant to, list it
Right.
or something.
The traders
Maybe,
might not even know, like the data won't, it gets really messy very quickly.
yeah, exactly. And also, one of the unfortunate things is that I might have meant to list it and then, I meant to send a transaction. Maybe these transactions
You're
were
listing it, you're canceling it, you're doing all sorts of things. But all of that has to be separate, like root updates, basically.
Yep.
Okay.
However, so basically, as a design decision, what we're going to say is that like you can't update a particular leaf more than once in a block.
Okay.
So we enforce that on chain to prevent these issues where you send a bunch of transactions with your compressed NFT, and they land out of order. The transactions land out of order,
Okay.
and so we wanted to prevent that. So we just said you can't have.
So the reason why this is concurrent is because you can have 64 trades, and then those will, because they only, specifically with this tree, they only update like the direct line. Because of that, we can update the root based off of all those trades once a block, or just for simplicity's sake, once a block. That's easy. But what if we do both of these? Their direct line is P1.
Yep.
How does that work in like concurrentness? How's that work?
Yeah. So okay. So now you're just kind of talking about this out loud. You're basically saying like, okay, let's say I want to transfer like L3,
Right.
right? So in this case, let's say it's going from,
Say Nick to Noah.
yeah, Nick to Noah. Okay. Now what you correctly identified is that the proof data for Nick's transfer involves this and this.
Right.
L4, so let's just say, for example, this is trade 2, right? So far, L4 has not been updated.
Right.
We're totally fine. The server, the proof data here is correct.
Like there's no collisions basically.
Yep, exactly. P1, on the other hand, has been updated. So this proof data, this is actually wrong.
Right. It'll be updated twice because there's a L3 and L1 are being updated. So that guy gets, one of them won't know what's going on correctly, basically, because it can't be verified. So how does this account for that? And if so, how?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, how?
So basically, what you're just to kind of flesh this out, what you said is that in the transfer data for T2, this proof data, P2, this is not going to match R prime.
Right. It's going to be completely different.
It's not going to be completely different.
Why?
It's actually meant for R.
Okay.
So it turns out, right, so the proof data actually is this, right? We have L4, the original parent,
So we're looking at the previous one.
and it matches R.
So overall, R to R prime will update based on all of them, and it's based off of the previous parents. Okay.
And so this is why it's really important that when we think about this theoretically, we're just kind of setting this up. And that way we have our bearings. All of these proofs are targeted at R.
Got it.
And so
whatever off-chain thing's going to do a lot of like hashing to figure out what that new P1, it would be like it's P1 double prime because it would be updated both by L3 and L1 getting updated.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So this is
Off-chain just figures it out. And then based off of the route that's put on chain, we can figure out the whatever it's supposed to be, I guess.
yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's pretty cool.
So this is what just to kind of relate what you just said back to what I've drawn. I think what you've said is when we complete this transfer of L3, we're actually also going to update P double prime.
Right.
But we actually still have an issue. Before we get to the point where we can, update this tree and then go to R double prime, we still need to kind of make sure that all of the changes that have happened since this trade happened, we need to make sure we can apply all of them.
We can verify all of them.
That we can
We're
verify.
actually true.
Yep.
Basically.
Exactly.
Okay, so I guess question, what are you, so if L1, say Jacob bought L1, they send transaction. The information with the proof that it sends transaction will be, I guess, P and R.
Yep.
To prove that I own this.
Actually, at this time, at P1 I owned it, right? Because
Right,
I
okay.
transferred it. So
Right.
here it's Noah.
Okay, so then it would be P prime and R prime. And so they have all that. That's what I sent as my proof to say that I updated or I own it. I'm ready to sell it. I'm trading it or whatever. And then basically that will all go in is the whatever verifier on chain will be like, yeah, you're good. Same with Nick saying I own L3, interacts with P1 prime. Will verify based off of R prime, and if everything verifies, yep, you're good to change. And then for anybody on the next block, they would be whenever they get the information, it would be R double prime, and then that continues with. And I guess they also have P1 double prime, and they continue on basically with whatever the next block is. How does R prime go to R double prime on chain though?
Yeah. So let's zoom in there. You have the process down correct. What we want to make sure is that one of the things we haven't verified is how do we make sure that this is a valid transition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, what we need to go from is when we start verifying a trade like T2, we actually start from here, right? We actually start from R, and we need to make sure that each thing that's happened since R is valid.
But we don't go forever, do we?
Correct. We just go from whatever route we targeted.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to clean this up. Is that all right?
Yep. Go for it.
Okay. So all we're tracking. Okay. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to verify previous changes. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea here is that what Jacob's asking about is how do we make sure that Nick is actually allowed to transfer,
Right.
L3, do the second trade. And so all we're basically doing is we're making sure that we're basically doing two things. One, we're making sure that they actually still have that NFT,
Mm-hmm.
making sure the claim is still valid. And the second thing is we're going to need to create a new route.
Right. Specifically over all trades that happened in the previous block, right?
Yeah, I mean, so we know that we're going to be able to kind of update everything,
Right.
but the key thing is that we have to go through these trades not only to make sure that the NFT already hasn't been transferred, but we also need to be updating our proof data in order to create an up-to-date route,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because this R1 is going to update, P1 and, right? So P1 is going to be updated to P double prime or P prime, and then this is going to be P1 double prime.
Right.
And so in our proof data, we're going to have to in our proof data here for P2 will actually have to use, oh, I see what I've done. When we're generating R double prime, we'll actually have to take P1 prime and put it into the proof.
Okay.
And so that's why we're kind of need to go through this step by step to verify everything.
Right. You have to have all information.
Yeah.
Okay. Question.
Yeah.
How do you, so if you have multiple trades on, say, a single leaf node, is it just first come, first serve them?
Yeah.
Okay. Just whoever makes it into the block first. Okay, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to update everything in time. Other question, how big is this array up top here?
Yeah, so this is a configurable part of the tree. On chain, we have like a fixed set of choices you have.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 64 is like the default, but you also have like 256.
Okay, so like the bigger this array is, the more, I guess, is it more composable? It's like you can do more with the leaves at any point in time.
Yeah, basically, it's more like the proofs can be targeted to a way out of date.
Why would you want that?
The idea was basically if the indexers are running really slowly.
Oh, okay.
So if you're using
Is there a minimum one then? Is there a minimum size?
the minimum size is 8,
Okay. So
but
just hoping the indexers run fast enough for that.
or maybe your tree just doesn't get a lot of action.
So that's one thing to, I guess, note. What if the indexers don't run fast enough? How do you then get back to the root?
Yeah, sure. So that is like a really important application layer part of concurrent Merkle trees, which is we're doing all this work to basically be able to update claims. But one of the things we haven't talked about is how do we inform off-chain servers of what updated? And what that requires is a spec for spitting out events.
Right. And so these events, they're just all in the ledger then?
Yeah,
Okay, so I guess if anybody falls behind, like say, I don't know, they're, just for simplicity's sake, let's just say this is a 1 or 2 element array. They're actually there's an indexer at, or I guess on chain it's on R double prime, some indexers still at R. They can replay whatever the transactions are from these events to get back to R double prime and continue the application.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so there's kind of, I think, just to note, there's like 2 types of events that have to be logged, right? One is an update, which nodes in the tree were updated. So basically information like this. That way, off-chain indexers can update their own proof data. They can just say, oh, I just need to, update P1 to P1 prime.
Okay.
That's the one type of event. The
Got it.
second type of event is the application layer, which
So-
is which metadata fields updated.
Right. So because everything's stored in the ledger, then anybody can index it. It's not like just the indexer is just for the quick lookups, basically.
Yeah.
But anybody can like build whatever the Merkle tree is, the current Merkle tree of whatever the compressed NFT is.
Yep. We
Collection.
it's one thing that to note that's a little bit special, but not a part of that's special about state compression, but not about concurrent Merkle trees, is that the events that are logged by state compression, like you said, are in the ledger. And the way we did that is by executing a CPI with the event data as the instruction data.
This is like your no-op CPI, right?
Yeah, this is
Okay.
the no-op CPI. And the reason for that is that CPI instruction data is usually retained in like the validator history. And so it has a little bit longer permanence than like just pure log data, which often gets truncated by RPCs.
Right. Question. So is that logs are not governed by consensus? How do you keep that from messing all this up?
So this is definitely a difficult part. You just have to trust.
Is this because like you can just replay your own transactions and figure out what the actual logs are?
Yeah,
Okay, so like if you really want to do bare bones, you would run your own validator, pull the snapshot, and then I guess take the transactions that happened previously and replay up until whatever the current block is, and then you can find the logs basically.
well, in this case, we don't use necessarily the logs, but yeah, you get like
That's like the hardcore way of doing it, I guess.
yeah, that's like the ultra hardcore way of doing
Okay,
it.
so
Yeah.
this you can still verify and not trust, but like it's easier to pull. I guess that's always easier to just pull the latest.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So why would, going back to this array, why would someone, okay, I remember something called like Campion depth.
Yeah.
How does that work in like, what does that do?
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to kind of. Do you mind if we move on past this?
Go for it.
Okay, cool. So what you're kind of talking about is this problem that we get with Solana transactions, which is that they're like only about a kilobyte long. And what this means is that, once you kind of start hitting like tree sizes of, 2 to the 15, which I think is like 32,000-ish
Okay.
kind of NFTs being managed by a tree, each node of the proof data for this is log to 15, which is just
Okay.
15. So you have 15 nodes times 32. What is this? It's like 600 or something.
Yeah, you can have a max of 30, basically 30. Is this depth then, I guess? Because you can only have, that's where you're getting maxing out. And then I guess you'll have to get less because you also have to include the pub key of whoever's sending it, and
Yeah.
other metadata, I guess the program. So you end up having like 25-ish max.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
like the idea is like the actual absolute max, like you said, was like 2 to the 30, which is like around like it's around a billion.
Okay.
Around a billion NFTs that you can put into a single root hash.
All right.
Now, like you said, like this is going to be 38 times 32. This is like 940 bytes. And so what I've done is I've taken the depth of the tree, 30, which is the number of proof nodes, times the size of each proof node, which is 32 bytes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have 940 bytes of proof data in a transaction that can only be
Right.
12.
You're running out of things that you can do.
Yeah, you
So I
can
guess-
barely pass additional accounts.
So is this depth out of those two things? So this is like, hey, the more depth you have, the less things you can do with these because you have to pass X amount of stuff in every transaction. So if you want to, like, I don't know, if you want to do something crazy with like Jupyter, if Jupyter existed with like compressed state, right? You can only have so much depth because there's I guess a trade-off between how much depth you can have and how many markets you can trade against. Because every market includes an additional pub keys, additional 32 bytes, and you minus from that 30, basically.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So
got it. So
yeah,
depth affects composability, basically.
yeah, exactly.
So what is Canopy then?
Cool. Yeah. So Canopy is a way of reducing the amount of proof data you have to send on chain
Okay.
by keeping a portion of the tree entirely on chain.
So this increases the cost, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So-
What is stored? If it's just, is it just the, wait, what? Yeah, what is stored?
Yeah, this is definitely one of the weirder parts. It was kind of a last minute
where-
addition
Yeah,
before this
it's
got
things where
shipped.
you're doing more than roots, right?
Yep. Okay. So what I've redrawn out is like what a a height 30 tree might look like,
Mhm.
and that's like the depth of the tree. Now, one of the issues is that for each successive parent, we have to send proof data. But with Canopy, we can actually keep a portion of the tree on chain and constantly keep this up to date.
Okay.
And so,
You send less proof data because that exists on chain.
yeah,
But doesn't it cause more operation? Doesn't it lower the amount of, I guess, executions you can do on the leaf nodes?
so this is a great question as well. This is actually this entire portion of the tree is whatever the most up-to-date root is. So
Okay.
basically, when we go R to R prime, right, we're going to update this, we're going to update this, and we're going to update this in the Canopy.
Okay.
When we go, R to R double prime, we're going to update here, here again, and then update here.
Right.
So we're constantly updating the paths through this. I guess we'd update here. Sorry, my bad. We're constantly updating the Canopy as we are editing and updating the Merkle tree and keep pushing trades through.
Right. So that lower the amount of executions that you can have. Or
No, it doesn't.
Why?
Um,
Because you have more stuff that you potentially have to update on chain.
right, but I guess it increases the amount of compute usage,
Okay.
but not necessarily limits.
Right, because you have to like verify this whole thing instead of just this. Every
Yeah.
single time. Okay. Wow. What does
Yeah.
the compute look like for this?
It's kind of a lot, but you know,
I mean, CPI is already 25K, right? So like add that if each one. Yeah, I could see that adding up a lot.
yeah, it's. But I don't think it's like awful. I think it's like less than a couple thousand.
Okay.
So it's like in that ballpark range. It's like of a couple thousand.
Okay.
Yeah, under 10, between like 800 and a couple, like 2,000 or something.
Okay. That's not the worst.
No. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah.
It adds up though.
yeah, it's definitely worth double checking the compute usage cost. But basically, whatever this upper part of the tree that we keep today on chain, however large that is, the canopy depth, that becomes the amount of proof data we have to send.
Right. So it's
So-
minus whatever it is.
Times
Yeah,
32.
it says. Okay.
And so canopy depth is that process of just shrinking the amount of data that you have to send.
So it's also like a trade-off of composability because if you end up getting too much compute, then you don't have much left you can do in your transaction, or it could cost more. as
Yeah.
well. Okay, that makes sense. So it's all trade-offs. The canopy and depth are all just trade-offs that you have to decide what you want to do.
No such thing as a free lunch.
That's true. That's true. All right. Is there anything else that you think we might have missed with us?
No. Yeah, I think that is a pretty in-depth look at concurrent Merkle trees.
Yeah, this has been great. I have learned a lot because to be perfectly honest, I did not know how all this worked beforehand. I'll be honest, I also didn't know how Merkle trees really worked beforehand. So this has taught me a ton. Really enjoyed your time here. Thank you, Noah, and we'll see you next time.